Well, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ashley Bell, and I'm the Director of Sales and Education here at DDO. I've had the pleasure of working with Véronique and her family for nearly 20 years, and this is our very first Zoom call. So thanks for bearing with us. We came up with the idea, well, like everyone pretty much, so much of our lives have turned virtual in these last 10, 11 months. And we wanted to create a forum to have Véronique talk to you about the upcoming wines that you're going to be getting in your next shipment, the 2019 Pinot Noir Dundee Hills and the 2019 Chardonnay Artois. And then with the release of our 2018 Rose Rock Pinot Noir, we noticed that the majority of you have added that to your wine club shipment as well. So we'll touch on that briefly too. So just a little bit of housekeeping and some tips for those of you that aren't on Zoom regularly. If you only see me right now, as opposed to a sea of smiling faces, you can switch your viewpoint from speaker to gallery. And the way that you do that is in the upper right-hand corner of your Zoom screen, click on view and select gallery instead of speaker. So that gives you a more broad perspective. Also, we're going to be keeping everyone on mute, with the exception of Véronique, of course, and the DDO team. But we do want to hear from you. If you have additional questions beyond the wonderful ones that were already submitted, please go ahead and use the chat function down in the bottom bar of Zoom there. And we hope to have many more of these tastings as well. I know there were some wonderful questions submitted. Within 30 minutes, we'll try to cover as much as possible, but we intend to host these on a more regular basis. We'll let you know when we'll have the Louise tasting scheduled shortly. And then also our team at DDO is going to start hosting virtual tastings and experiences as well. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to the team, at least virtually. So many of you correspond regularly with our wine club manager, Diane Savino. Hello.
Hi, everybody.
And then if you're calling to the winery, you've most likely spoken with Stephanie as well. I know, fun way to meet everybody. And then upstairs in the tasting room, we have our tasting room manager, Madeline. And we have Megan, our assistant manager. We refer to her as Lou sometimes as well. And then we have Abigail, otherwise known as Abby here.
Hi.
So yeah, so we hope to be able to connect with you on a more regular basis when we're not able to host the larger events. But let's see, I think that covered all of my initial points. So yeah, without further ado, we'd love to turn the floor over to Véronique to chat about 2019.
Thank you, Ashley. Hello, everyone. So I am not in Oregon. I am in Bowen. So I'm trying to work with the light because it's dark. It's only 7, but it's winter time and it's dark. But I'm really thrilled that Ashley had and the team had this idea. So we'll see how it works. Please excuse if it's because it's the first time. And I did see some of your questions. I will try to cover some of the topics. And if I forget, maybe Ashley will remind me some of the questions you did ask. So first, to start about 2019 vintage, I have to say we have been blessed for the last 10 years and maybe even more with a row of different but very beautiful vintage. 2019 started as a little bit of a wet and cold weather, which is great because this is in the winter and this is when the vines are dormant. So they don't really care about the snow or the rain or if it's cold or warm. It's actually a good thing if it is cold. We like it. This is something we are missing here a little bit, a long time of cold weather. And the good news with the rain is that we built some reservoir in the water for the summer, which actually in 2019, we had some some episodes where it was dry, but we didn't go through really deep drought, dry season. To be noticed also in 2019 is so the growing season goes very well. We have no major issues, which is always the worry with potential disease. That was an easy growing season. The crop was to start with not that big. It's fine. It's okay. We've been blessed with much bigger crops like 2016. It was larger crop. 2017 was a larger crop, actually larger than 16. 2019, we knew from the start that it wouldn't be such a big crop, and that was good. During harvest, so harvest started, and I have my little notes here. It's interesting because if you take 17, 18, 19, we picked in that order September 21st, September 22nd in 18, and September 20th in 19. So interesting, kind of a similar window for those last three vintages. And we finished on October 11, October 7, and October 9. So very, very similar time of picking. A little bit of a challenge for 2019 was two things. One, we did get a little bit of rain at the beginning of harvest, which is not necessarily something you want. If there's a little bit of rain, it's great. If there's too much rain, it's not great. And so that impacted of when to pick. And that was a key decision in 2019. I'd say the decision of when to pick a block was very crucial. And I think what paid off in 19 was to be patient and not to worry about a little bit of it coming. It's fine. The fruit, when it's healthy, they do okay with a little bit of rain. I mean, it's like us. If we go and walk under the rain, we'll be fine. If we stay for a week under the rain, we won't be so fine. So in the end, fairly easy harvest, quite condensed. I mean, that time of picking from September 20 to 9th of October, that covers 50 hectares of the estate at DVO and 50 hectares at Rose Rock. These were all picked in that time frame. A little bit of the challenge was shortage of pickers. That is kind of new in the valley. There's more of us making wine and there's not more pickers. So we had to deal with that. And that is something we don't realize, but it's important because if you decide tomorrow I'm going to pick 2 acres, sorry, we won't have enough pickers to do that. So you have to make plans and plan out of time. So this being said, we pick the fruit, we make our decision. Philippe and I spend a lot of time in the vineyard, mostly Philippe, because when we start bringing fruit, I have to be at the winery with the team, of course, with Aaron. But Philippe, he goes every day, all the time to the vineyards. Now that we have made one at DVO for 33 years, we kind of know which blocks ripen first. So it's not like a huge surprise and we have to go everywhere at the same time because we know which block always is ripe and already first and the ones that are later. And as for those who have been at DVO, there's quite a slope. So of course, the early ripening site, we know them. So that makes it also a little bit easier. Now on the winemaking side, when the fruit did arrive, we do have those sorting tables, and it's very important to have them to remove anything that we don't like. If there's a little bit of botrytis, if there's too much leaves, sometimes because they go quickly, so they leave some leaves, not something we really want. It also helps decide if we want to keep whole cluster. I know it is not necessarily something a lot of people play with, but my background with whole clustering bagging has been very interesting. I tried at the beginning at DVO, but maybe the vines were too young and the climate was cooler. And I have to say I did not like it very much using the whole cluster in Oregon. What is it using the whole cluster is you pick your fruit and normally we separate those little berries from the stem. And when we talk about whole cluster, we keep the whole cluster totally intact and we put that in the tank. And so how to choose those, the sorting table is very useful for what we call the positive sorting in deciding on the fruit that we will keep. It's like if you go and pick an apple on the tree, the apple may come very easily. That means you have a perfect ripeness and sometimes it's a bit hard to pull. Well, so how do we decide for this whole cluster? This is what we call the phenolic ripeness. So phenolic ripeness concerns the berry, the skins, the pips. We look at the pips. Are they still green? That's a good sign it's not perfect and not ready. And if the pip is brown, which is what we look for, how is the stem? The stem will go from green to a little bit of brownish color. Same with your apple. When it comes easily, it means you have reached the phenolic ripeness. So it seems to be a small detail, but at the end it can be an important one. And the reason of using stems, I think they do contribute to the complexity of the wine, but you don't want to use too much. And that's how we decide. And in Oregon, the percentage is never very high. I go from 10 to 15% and sometimes 20%, but not on every fermenter. It's usually the blocks that ripens the best. And almost every year now, it is the same block that we look at that we make it haut classin. So overall, some years we make it more, some years we make it less. In 2019, I have to admit we went less on using too much haut clusters. Now we speak about DDO and also Rose Rock. So DDO is in Dundee and Rose Rock is in Iola. A question I get often is, how are they similar? How are they different? Well, the very nice thing about those two sites, they are not in the same, there's about half an hour between two of them, but the geography and the geology also is different. The Rose Rock area, the Iola Hills, is the cooler site. So there's kind of a colder air flowing through the Van Duzer corridor, and it makes the fruit ripen later, which is great for us because we don't have to pick all that fruit at the same time as DDO. The Dundee Hills tends to ripen a little bit earlier. It's not 2 weeks difference, but it could be a week difference, which is very nice. Now, in the fruit, what we have noticed is the Dundee Hills, I call it my Chambol-Musigny, and Rose Rock, I call it my Gevrey-Chambertin site. It's just because these are the two villages that I find most of the time the wine tends to want to resemble to. The fruit of Rose Rock is thick skins, and they tend to give very, very nice textured wines. They have good structure, where the Dundee Hills, the wines are always very gracious, very soft, more like Chambol style. And that comes from the soil, not just from the climate. It's the cooler climate, yes. I mean, cooler, it's not cold, but it's a bit cooler. But I think it also comes from the soil. We don't know all of the secrets in the soil, but definitely there are nuances, there are little differences in the composition of the soil. DDO is on Jory. This is the type of volcanic soil we have. Rose Rock has also Jory, but it also has Nekaya. If we go to Rose Rock and we look for stones, we will find them. If we are at DDO, it won't be very easy to find them. At DDO, the water will kind of stay in the soil, so the vines have very little problem with drought when it's too dry. At Rose Rock, the water will drain easily through the soil, so it's a site that we may need to irrigate. So kind of some differences that will impact on the wine and does impact on the decision we need to make. Now, actually, I don't know if I'm going too much into some details, or because I know some of the questions were.
Yeah, no, Véronique, I think this is wonderful, and you're really hitting on a lot of questions that everyone submitted. I think one of the other main questions were what would you describe the 2019 personality as for what would one expect in the Pinot Noirs and Chardonnays, and how would that compare, I don't know, to 2018, 2017?
Mm-hmm. So 2019, it happens that because I'm in Bonn and because of COVID, but we always have work like this, you may wonder, how do you follow the wine because you are not at DDO all the time? Well, Aaron sends me sample every month, so I get to follow the wine easily. These are little grenades and they travel very well. FedEx does a good job, so it can take from 2 to 8 days, but that's fine. It's very full little bottles, so I can run them through our analysis little lab here, but also we taste them, and that allows me to follow them. But I was so excited yesterday. We got the shipment of the 2019 blends ready to be bottled. And I'm talking of Cuvée Lorraine, Louise, Zéphirine, and Edition Limitée, and actually the Rosé also. And I was so happy. I mean, tasting, so I said to my brother Philippe, because it's interesting for him to taste the wine, because he does all the work in the vineyard. So he always has a question. I tried this, how did you find it worked in the winery? So anyway, he was with me, and so was Lorraine, my daughter, and someone from our team here. And when we first sipped the Cuvée Lorraine, I said, this is Chambol again. It is incredibly gracious. So 2019 doesn't have, I think, the big structure that some other vintages have. 15, we got that. 18 is actually a bit more intense. I love the 18s. I mean, I like every vintage lately. They're all different, but I really like them. But I think you will find in 2019, they're really a lovely type grain of tannins. We call the grain, it's kind of the impression you have on your tongue. They are delicious. So this is for the Pinot with great personality. The Zéphyrin is always very lively, very perfumed. It's always wine that has a fabulous perfume. I think it just carries its name perfect because Zéphyrin is a rose, but the wine tends to be so floral and beautiful. I didn't talk about the Chardonnay, but not to forget that we also make a little bit of Chardonnay. And both sides, so DDO and Rose Rock, we have Chardonnay, about the same production on both sides. So for the Chardonnay, as you probably, some of you know, we don't go 100% to oak with all of the juice. The idea behind that is that we don't take too much from oak. We don't want to produce Chardonnay that is too vanilla, too oaky, but at the same time, they need that time, some of the wine. It's important to have it in oak because, just to remind, the use of oak is not to get flavors, but it's to allow the wine to breathe. Because when it's in stainless steel, there's nothing happening with the outside. It just gives very lively wines, very fresh and a very lovely nose, sort of like Chablis style. But in the barrels, they will get this slow breathing. We call it oxydation ménager. So it's a very, very gentle oxidation that happens. And that contributes to the complexity, to the volume, to the plenitude of the wine. So we tried with the Chardonnay to come to a balance, and then we blend those two wines. I have to say I've done for years 50-50%, and I may shift now to maybe I will do a little bit more in oak, not using more new oak. And the reason for that is I think the vines are getting older, and when they were very young, there's so much they can give, but now they've built, with time, a vine always gives better wine. So I think they've built something that is interesting that I may still some things to experience. So it's a good vintage. The Iola Amity Hill, I think it will be soon a very well recognized AVA for Chardonnay. I have lots of friends who make Chardonnay there, and it's so good. It's very, very good. They have great aging potential. They're really balanced wine. For us, we only go back to 2014. That is not very long on the history. DDO, we go back to, actually the first vintage was 92, but we sold 94. The first vintage, I think, was 94 or maybe 96. And so it's fun to go back. Which one was it, Ashley?
94 was the first year that we made Chardonnay at DDO, but then 96 is when the first time that we offered it for sale.
Yes. Okay. And so what is interesting for us, we kept a little bit of all these wines as a library just to see how they will age, because that is a question we did get back then with my father. I said, so how long do you think these wines will age? What's the aging potential? Honestly, we did not know. Based on our experience, we would say for the Pinot, we thought 8-10 years was safe to say that. I remember with 88 vintage and 89 vintage, which we liked. Well, now if we taste these, we don't have many bottles left, or we have a few. And when we occasionally open one, they are delicious. So I am really happy for my father, because he believed in Oregon back then. And to see that the wines that he thought would age 8-10 years did age for 30 years or more. I'm not saying that all the vintages might age that well, but honestly, if we line them up, the only one that was very tough was 97. And not all the 33 vintages, that was my least favorite one. And then we had 98 that was stunning vintage. So we do have vintage variation. It's interesting. I'm looking at the notes. There was a little bit of talk on barrel, so I touched that subject on why we use the barrel, but also on the new oak. I'm not going big on new oak on that. I tried, and I think for the Oregon Chardonnay, you don't want to go too much with the oak, because you want the wine to get in a sort of a symbiose with the élevage. Is really that time where the wine will get the harmony, where it will refine its tannins, where the malolactic fermentation will happen. The malolactic, sometimes you hear about this. What is it? Well, malolactic, it's two acids. Malic acid that transform to a much more quiet, much more delicate acid called lactic acid. So normally for the reds, you always go through malo. With the whites, you may have the options of not to go. Being in Oregon, cooler climate, it's a luxury that we start with fruit that has very good acid, so we can go through malolactic fermentation. Normally, Chardonnay will go through malo. Always the one that is in the barrel. The tank, I may play a little bit with the malo, sometimes stopping before the end, but you start with good acid, so you finish also with some good acid, which is important in the wine for its future, for its freshness, for sort of also its backbone. So this is if you have questions on those, I'm really happy. And then the blending. So there was one question: how do we select the barrels for Classique versus Lorraine, Louise Arthur? So at the beginning, from 88 to 92, actually to 91, we only made one wine, and that was why we went to Oregon, was to make that wine, DDO, Dundee Pinot Noir. And so we made the first vintage and said, let's see what we can do. If we like the wine, we stay. If we don't, we just sell that land and go back to Burgundy. So we are still there. So you probably can guess that we were happy with what we made. And but we made these wines a couple of years in a row, but we have all this cuvée in the cellar. We taste them every month and we make a little tasting note. And I remember in 92, my father said, gee, we have some stunning wine in the cellar. Maybe we should keep those separate and see what that blend does. So we did. And that is how Lorraine Cuvée was born. It is also that year she was born. But Cuvée Lorraine was born like that. So a selection of, not based on where they were on the property, because we did not know those sites that well. We know them much better now. It was just based on our palate. The wine had more complexity, not more powerful, but more complexity. We thought more aging potential. And so we blended those barrels. Of course, the volume was not as big as the Dundee Pinot. And voila, that's how Cuvée Lorraine was born. So the selection has been for many years based on, on our palate. Couple of years later, we have the estate producing more. We start to plant in 88. You know, the vines start to produce after 3 years. So Philippe planted a little bit of acres every year. So we have more coming from the estate. And with his choice of high density, of pruning, of yields, and the quality of the vintages, we really had lovely wines in the cellar. So in 99, I would say we take the best from the best, and we picked 8 barrels. So not much, only 8 barrels that we thought were, for us, the nicest. This was our Musigny, where here we have one vineyard called Musigny, and we can't play with anything else. It's Musigny and that's it. And actually, it's an extraordinary site. So we decided, let's pick the barrels we think are the best to make our little Musigny there. And that one became Cuvée Louise. So this is still how we do it. We really taste and choose what we find is the most refined. The Louise is, for us, the most refined of all of them. Voilà. So yeah, so that's how we do. What is interesting is after 30 years, and you choose, let's say we have 32 cuvées in the cellar, and 3 or 4 will make Cuvée Lorraine, and 1 or 2 will make Cuvée Louise. You ask yourself, oh, okay, I chose that, but where was it on the property? Where did that grapes come from? Oh, okay, it came from this 2000 block. The next year you do the same exercise. Where did that come from? Again, I have the 2000 block. And then so a couple of years in a row, you realize that that block always makes it to the blend. So that is, I find, a fascinating time we are living, because we are defining, we are finding our own little terroir. Terroir does exist, terroir is everywhere. It's just that we did not know them when we arrived there. Like Burgundy, wine has been made for such a long time, and then the monks started to write, we have records. And then people have been, of course, the oral transmission is important. Already we just started doing that. So I think it's a fascinating time where we are starting to define our own little climat at DDO.
So speaking of terroir, we do have some questions about how do the 2019 DDO wines compare to the 2019 Burgundies?
And just to give a little time check, we're looking, it's 10:26 right now. So we have about 5-10 more minutes left if we go a little bit over. So I just wanted to insert that.
Okay,
go ahead,
so
Véronique.
It's my fault, because I know there's so many questions and I think they're all fantastic. I wish I could answer them all. On my side, I can go beyond the limited time. I don't know if Zoom allows that. But to answer the question, Caitlin, it's funny, most of the vintages are, and from absolutely no reason, but they are very similar. And I think 2019 is extremely delicious and gracious in Burgundy, and the wines in Oregon will be the same. So there's maybe more alcohol in the wines of Burgundy. We had really a big warm year. It didn't make really big wines, but they're high in alcohol. And the good news is they are really good acids. Where DDO doesn't have that high level of alcohol, and the acids are nice too.
There's a question here. Yeah, no, there's another question here. A few people asked this, and they've noticed that some other Willamette Valley wines can be quite a bit more jammy or fruitier than the DDO wines. How is it that you've maintained to keep our style different from that? And how do you maintain excellence from vintage to vintage?
Well, I don't know, because I don't work in some of the cellars, but I know what there's a few things that are important in order to keep that freshness. And one is the temperature of the cellar. It's really, really important to keep a cool temperature, even when you put the wine. So one thing that I like to do is when the red will go to the cellar, I like the cellar to be cold so that the malo doesn't start quickly. A lot of people like to go through malo quickly. It's just safer. Once they've done malo, you add a little bit of sulfur, you protect them. I don't mind if actually I like to delay the malolactic, because it has a couple of things that happens, but one of them, it allows the tannins and the anthocyanins, so what gives the color and what gives the texture, to combine. And that is a very important thing to make the wine age in the future. And if you keep the cellar cool, the malo will be delayed, so it's a good thing. It makes the wine, when they go through malo, that's where you see the finesse and the complexity coming up. And so trying to keep the cellar cool, I think, is one of the elements. And then once the malo is finished and you have to keep the wine, still keep it cool so the color doesn't change too quickly. You keep those lovely red color that Oregon has, beautiful color.
All right, so another question, thank you. Another question just popped up, and this one was actually probably one of the most popular questions. Can you talk a little bit about 2020 and the harvest?
Yes, so 2020, this is something that I have never experienced, and I think very few of my friends in Oregon, except those who had been in maybe California or Australia before. So we had this, as you all know, the fires. That the fires were not close to the vineyards, but so the flames were not close to the vineyards, but the smoke came into the valley. And the problem is, if it stays for a long time, that the flavors of the smoke, the components of the smoke, the polyphenols, the phenol volatile, they go to the skin. They really go inside the skin. And when we arrived with my brother, the smoke was gone, the weather was beautiful. We taste the fruit, and Philippe said, "What are all these fake news? They taste delicious. They are perfectly ripe. We'll make great wines from these grapes." And so we talk, of course, we knew there was a big problem before. We saw everyone with masks, friends who we spoke to. And very quickly we learned that it is not at that stage that you can taste or see anything or smell anything. It's after, when you go through fermentation. And true enough, so the big decision was, do we pick the fruit? And Philippe and I discussed about that. And the positive side of the problem was we learned a lot. We really learned, and we are still learning. But his thought was, okay, we spend the whole year growing the fruit. We have spent a lot of money growing the fruit. And how will we learn if we don't try? So we both decided to pick the fruit, to make the wine the best we could, listening to all the advice. And there was a lot of really good advice from people who had, sadly for them, but a lot of experience with the fire. And they said a few very interesting things. So we made the wine. And some people are much more sensitive than others to what we call smoke taint. Aaron is very sensitive. At first, it's kind of nice because it's a bit smoky, like bacon, but it's not really something you want to the wine. So in the end, we have made the wine, and we did decide that none of the wine, the Pinot we made, will be bottled as DDO. So there will be no Domaine Drouhin Oregon or Rose Rock 2020 Pinot. Now, every problem has a silver lining, and the beautiful silver lining was the Chardonnay. So the fantastic news is the Chardonnay from all the tests they do and they have done for in California and Australia, is the Chardonnay doesn't seem to pick it. And so plus the Chardonnay you pick and you press, and certainly you avoid any skin contact. Sometimes you can play with Chardonnay. I'm not a big fan of that. So we picked the fruit, we threw away what was coming at the beginning, the hard press we didn't keep just to be safe. Maybe it was not even necessary. And so we don't have much wine in the cellar, but we do have the gorgeous 2020 Chardonnay. I'm super excited. So it will get a lot of love.
A lot of love indeed. All right. Well, we're nearing the end, so I thought we might circle back to 2019 for one last question. What was your favorite surprise of the 2019 vintage?
My favorite surprise, this is more personal than technical, is my parents come for maybe few people know that, but every year since '88, my parents have been coming to DDO to help for harvest. And my best help in the lab has been my mother. So 2019, great surprise, because my father is getting old, he's 86 now. My mother is not getting any younger, and so traveling is becoming different. But they said, we will come. So my best surprise is that they said, we'll come and help you. So I had my mom working in the lab, and she's the best. She's really good. So, and she has a great palate. So tasting with my dad and with her and my brother, of course. So that was, sorry, maybe you were expecting a technical answer, but it's just, yeah, it was a good surprise that they would come. Yeah, they love it. They absolutely love to come to Oregon. Yeah.
Well, I don't remember exactly who asked that question, but I love that answer because it's always so wonderful at harvest when we have you and Philippe and your parents and there. So it's it all adds extra joy. So on that note, I really want to thank all of you that were able to join us this morning. I apologize that we weren't able to cover all of the questions. We did promise that we would keep it to 30 minutes, and I know everyone has differing schedules, but we will send out more specific details on the next call with Véronique. We're looking at exactly a month from now on March 4th. It'll probably be a similar time as Véronique is in Burgundy, so we have that 9-hour time difference to contend with. But pay attention to the newsletter that's included in your upcoming wine club shipment. It'll give a little bit more information about contacting us to set up a call with one of our members from the team to chat about the 2019s. We also have just released on our website information about setting up virtual tastings if you want to do that with friends or family or colleagues and whatnot. So, or just give us a call. We're all happy to chat with you too. So we look forward to seeing you on the next call and some of you at the winery soon too. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Have a great day, everyone. And a glass of DDO Pinot tonight.
Ah oui. Bonsoir Ashley. Bonsoir tout le monde.
Bonsoir.